Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
Alex hated paying with coupons. Lately, it seemed to him that his family could be included in the record book by how often they presented these coupons at the checkout of the economy Cohill supermarket. No, in principle, there was nothing particularly shameful in it, as it were, and many in lean times, especially in their neighborhood, saved with coupons. But personally for Alex, they became the last straw, the last atom, which threatened, figuratively speaking, to black hole the universe of his nervous system. Total, including coupons, the salesman said, that'll be $26.01. Alex sighed and rustled the contents of his wallet. What did he buy? A couple gallons of milk, a package of bacon, peanut butter, more mosquito traps, and so on. Where's his hard-earned money? Hey, Alex. From the tail of the long line, Bill's old acquaintance came out and waved. How's it going? I'm fine, Alex replied with a duty smile. If there was one thing he had learned during his years of living in America, it was to smile, no matter how lousy the reality was in his soul. Buying the lottery? Bill asked. No, Alex dismissed it. And I do, said Bill, who was already known all over the neighborhood. He spent almost $100 every paycheck on all kinds of lotteries, believing that by following his own cleverly devised system Bill taught math at school, he would one day hit the jackpot. Last month, I won a coffee maker and $20. Can you believe that? Muttered Alex. Bill was a strange man, of course, but at least he was lucky to have a wife, Stella, who put up with all his antics. But Naomi, she would have fed him that lottery ticket for dinner. And no, it wasn't that their marriage was on the verge of divorce. She had always been like that. Powerful, tenacious, strict to the point of impossibility. And now Alex just hated himself for putting up with all this in the name of love for more than 20 years. Maybe you'll buy it? A new lottery. The salesman pestered and twirled a bright red ticket under Alex's nose. The grand prize is $10 million. I'd like 12 grand, please. Bill came up from the back of the line again. Alex wanted to tell the salesman to shut up with his intrusive advertising of the lottery, to just give him his unfortunate check and the purchases in the bag. But then he thought once again about how unlucky he was with his wife, and the idea struck him like a thunderbolt. Why not have a mini riot? He'll buy a lottery ticket to spite Yolka and let him do whatever he wants. After all, is he a man or what? Is he the breadwinner of the family or what? Let's have a lottery. Alex waved his hand, and as his mood improved from his own audacity, he waved to everyone in line and in the store within sight and wished them a good day. The Walker family moved to America, to the state of Montana, in the late 90s, just lucky, just won a green card. People they knew at the time were jealous. Alex was terribly proud of the fact that he was a simple guy, yesterday an ordinary factory worker. Today, he could realize the American dream. They left, as they believed, in a fairy tale. They sold the apartment, which Alex lost from his parents when he was a student. They sold the car that Naomi's parents had given him for the wedding. Packed their suitcases, bought phrase books, and let's go. To the sea, to America. And at first, it seemed that everything would be okay just to settle in a new place, not afraid of difficulties. And then there will be a big house with a green lawn in a prestigious area, a red sports car for the head of the family, and a spacious Jeep for the whole family. There will be vacations in Hawaii and Florida. There will be everything that the soul desires. But it turned out, no one was waiting for them there in America. It turned out that there are enough of their own seekers of happiness, and foreigners have twice as hard to achieve. 8 years ago, the Walkers were forced to sell their tiny house in the suburbs ordinary and move to the suburbs of the most suspicious reputation, where they settled not even in a house, but in a trailer. And the neighbors were the same poor people, all lived in the trailer park. Really, it only seemed at first to be a disaster and the end of everything. After all, at first the Walkers thought that in such places live, well, alcoholics, all sorts of antisocial elements. But then, when they delved into the subject, they found out curious details. It turned out that some trailer parks are very similar to ordinary such mini villages here at each mobile home. which from the outside, due to the competent installation, looked like a normal house. There was a small green lawn and some flowers and bushes. The Walkers were fortunate enough to move into just such a place. Their house had an electric stove, sewerage, hot and cold water. Of course, there were only 2 rooms, one bedroom for the couple and a living room, which also became a nursery for their son Max, or Max as his name was changed. In fact, thanks only to this move, and did not find themselves on the street. Paid a month, however, for rent a place under the house, a lot of as much as $500. But we managed. In general, later looking back, Alex realized they were too guided by their foolish dreams and poorly prepared. They were too hopeful that they would be able to pay off the loans. In general, if they had stayed at home, they would have lived at that time much better. When they realized this, it was too late to go back. Approaching his street, Alex slowed down his step and involuntarily admired the landscape beyond the suburbs and outside the city, far away, and at the same time it seemed quite close. The mountains rose to the sky, at this pre-dawn hour colored in gold and purple. The air was filled with the smells of late autumn, permeated with fresh hints of the coming winter. Alex sighed and resolutely sped up his step. Nothing. They had lived another day. Everyone was alive and well, so there was nothing to complain about. There will be macaroni and cheese for dinner, Naomi informed him, as soon as he crossed the threshold. Well, okay. Alex shrugged and nodded obediently. They ate macaroni and cheese often, and actually, it was delicious. But lately Naomi had been making it too often, and when he once tried to object, saying, "I'd like to have a variety," there was such a scandal. And it would seem, what's the problem with cooking it yourself? Alex had learned to cook well in his student days. He could fry fish juicy and crispy. He could make a pie with apples and a melting salad herring under a fur coat. But there was only one problem. Naomi, if his wife was in a bad mood, she made scandals about the fact that here, from her hands, the family does not want to eat. Apparently, she cooks very badly. So Alex, at some point, saving the nervous system, stopped getting up to the stove. And it's not a big loss. So he consoled himself. It was always possible to look into a diner, and the Mexican cook there cooked in such a way that you could lick your fingers. Alex even had a secret stash in a secret pocket of his jacket for this purpose. "And Max, has he been away again?" asked the head of the family when his wife put the plates and utensils on the table for 2. Naomi, instead of answering, shook her lips and snorted like a disgruntled and cold horse. How could it be otherwise? If the father can't keep the boy in line. "I see," nodded Alex and sat down. He poked the pasta with a fork. Today his wife was generous and added some vegetables to it, green beans, onions, and zucchini. "What do you understand?" Naomi tightened her lips so that visually they disappeared from her face altogether. Alex cautiously looked up, and although he was both afraid of his wife and pissed her off terribly, he felt sorry for her. Where was his old Naomi, the funny, russet-haired beauty who wore dresses and sang when she washed dishes? Ever since his wife couldn't get a good job as an editor at any publishing house, she'd been replaced. No, she got a job on a fertilizer packaging line for agriculture. And then she also worked at an organic food store. But every year she gave up more and more. She gained weight. She grumbled about it. "I didn't want to lose weight." Wore jeans or Bermuda shorts, shirts or sweatshirts. I dyed my hair straw yellow, and as long as I had money, I was always buying stuff in the store that was on TV. "It's nothing," he answered with the usual and usually successful phrase to extinguish the incipient conflict, and then returned his attention to the plate with dinner. After dinner, Alex read a classic book, a novel about the life of the working class in Victorian England, and then went to bed. The fact that his son had not come home for the night was still disturbing, but it was no longer terrifying. Because of its ordinariness, Max had been rebelling lately in a way that would have been enough for 4 young sons. The couple fell asleep, as always, on opposite sides of the bed and under separate blankets. The nights, by the way, were getting cooler and cooler, and it was time to think about buying a new heater. The old one was broken. But where to get money if the budget for 2 months in advance is calculated? Coupons for such a large purchase are not enough, and Alex decided tomorrow to talk to his bosses about giving him a salary in advance, and then when they buy, well, they'll get by somehow. As a last resort, We can stop by the food bank. In general, many neighbors went there regularly and came back with very decent boxes of food. But for Alex, visiting this place was something that seemed impossible to overcome because it seemed to be a marker, a red flashing light bulb, a torch in the night. In short, something that symbolizes that you, brother, have gone down. Naomi, however, did not want to take anything there for another reason. She thought that everything expired and of poor quality was sent there. The morning of the next day started surprisingly well by the time Alex woke up. His wife had already left to take an extra shift in a cleaning company that specialized in cleaning homes, often belonging to wealthy Americans. By the time the head of the family had almost finished his bowl of cornflakes and milk, the front door of the trailer slammed and footsteps were heard. "Hi, Dad," the son said and flopped down on the couch, not even bothering to remove the pile of dirty clothes he had created himself. Lazy big boy. Alex cursed at his son, but only to himself in his mind, and his hearing said something else. "Son, can we talk?" "Here we go," Max exclaimed and rolled his eyes. "Son, please understand, please, my mom and I are just very worried about you. You're young, your whole life is ahead of you, and I dared to choose with whom to be friends without asking your permission." Max sat down on the couch, sharply frowning. "How many times do I have to say it? My friends are not Satanists or maniacs, just rockers and free individuals, and I already graduated from high school this year. What more do you want from me?" Out of everything, Alex could agree with his son only in the last thing. Those guys were really free. Mostly they were all from not very prosperous families, so they went on crooked paths. Alex was convinced that decent people, they would not ride motorcycles in dubious places to get by with casual, and maybe there are different rumors and criminal earnings, to shout like crazy at concerts with this strange, rattling music. Yes, Alex was one of those who recognized the music in the first place, the old Soviet pop music, and all this rock, rap, and the like considered a bad tone. And what only to do with you?" sighed the head of the family. "Leave alone." Max, jumping up and picking up his jacket, flew to the front door. "It seems that I have no place in my own house." "Oh yes, what am I talking about?" The guy made an exaggeratedly surprised face. "I almost forgot we live in a trailer like white trash. And you," now he was looking at his father contemptuously. "You and your mother trying to tell me how to live my life. You couldn't build your own life, so you're trying to screw mine up for company. Fuck you." To the Mexican border, Max finished censoriously, but with the opposite implication, and jumped out of the house and slammed the door so hard that all the walls shook. Alex, also on the verge, rushed after him. What a bastard. But then he got a pain in his lower back so badly that it even bent. And so, of course, he didn't catch up with him. I only saw how the son jumped on his motorcycle wreck, bought with the money he had been saving for 3 years, and drove away, leaving behind him a column of dust and the aftertaste of the fact that he, in fact, and right, what kind of parents are they? So, losers who can only set a bad example. In such a disgusting mood, Alex went to work. He was lucky to get a job at a furniture warehouse. Having come to work, Alex said hello to everyone, changed into a uniform, gray overalls, and was about to climb on the forklift, a huge machine, which, however, he quickly learned to control, as he was called by a velvety female voice. "Jennifer." Alex smiled, and how could he not smile at Jennifer, the yesterday's student, who worked here as a secretary, while sending questionnaires to modeling agencies, was loved by everyone here. Stately, hair like a raven's wing, sensual makeup, and such a short skirt wears. In general, hold on, that single and married men. And Jennifer also had a light and a little walk character. True, she walked not for nothing, and for a bouquet of flowers, benevolent was not preferred gifts expensive. No, she didn't behave in such a way that anyone could call her a girl of the oldest profession. But yes, she had the potential, judging by the way Jennifer chose her lovers. She handed him a tablet to sign. "I'll sign," nodded Alex. Actually forgot to sign the explanatory note about the fact that he had seen crates with fragile contents tumbling down from one rack, not because he was a clumsy forklift driver, but because they had been stacked unsteadily in the first place. Thanks to this report, by the way, Alex could count on a full paycheck, and they believed him and didn't fine him. "How are you?" he asked out of politeness. Great, Jennifer replied and blew a bubble of their chewing gum. It smelled like strawberries, and the girl was also wearing a leopard-colored blouse with an unashamedly deep neckline. No matter how much Alex tried to keep love and respect for Naomi and himself, he looked at his colleague's charms, and so sad, here, to the pinching pain in his soul sometimes became from the fact that his train left home, no beautiful wife, no banal respect from his spouse, and someone will get such a beautiful Jennifer, and it'll probably be a man with money. The working day dragged on, and when it was over, Alex could hardly believe it. He wanted to go home already and just fall asleep. His legitimate few hours of peace and rest, and tomorrow to work again, and then again, and then again, and again, until the very end, as long as there would be strength to move his legs and lift his arms, because Alex had already calculated everything, and it turned out that with their family credit bondage and regular obligatory payments, it would be impossible to be idle in retirement. It would be necessary to work, and certainly one should not count on the fact that his son would grow up and support him financially. If they don't put him in jail in the next few years, he'll be happy. Already changing from his work clothes into his own, Alex suddenly found a piece of paper in his pocket. He took it out and recognized it. Remembered that yesterday he had bought a lottery, and the drawing took place this morning. Should I check it out? See if they won $100. He could check the results in the newspaper, and having bought it on his way home, Alex started comparing the numbers, and at first he thought he was wrong. His heart sank into his heels. He checked it again, and now he was just shocked, because he had hit the jackpot. Leaning against his bike, Max looked at his friends in the distance. They were sitting around the fire, talking about something funny, judging by the bursts of laughter. And he was off to the side where dusk had fallen to blackness and where they had left all their bikes. Max stood with his arms folded across his chest and thought about his life. In general, this didn't happen to him very often, and he hated it. But sometimes the thoughts wouldn't let go. He had been born here in America, so he couldn't understand his parents' stories about another life. And when he did, when he was younger, he was angry why they had left everything there. There was an apartment, some position in society. They could buy all the food they wanted in the store, and said that he would have studied in a good school there, would have entered university. But becoming a teenager, Max began to cut off such conversations. What's the use of grieving about the abandoned if it does not help the present? He grew up with the feeling of the gap between his reality and the way he wanted to live. Yes, there was an option to become an excellent student, get a scholarship, and go to college. But no matter how hard Max tried to study well, it did not work. And there could be no indulgences for achievements in sports either, because he was the worst in it. The only thing he was brilliant at was repairing motorcycles. So after high school, he got a part-time job at an auto repair shop, and he was losing hope that he could get into a college for free. Hi, Stuart appeared out of nowhere next to Max, and Max immediately looked up, squared his shoulders. Stuart wasn't an easy guy. People like him don't usually hang out with white trash. They didn't know much about Stuart, but there was no doubt that he was from a family of rich people, those who had separate houses for summer vacations on the East Coast. Stuart had the coolest, trickiest motorcycle. He wore only black clothes and lots of genuine leather. His ears were pierced, his lips and belly button often exposed by short and ripped t-shirts. Stuart was 22 years old, so he had a bonus, extra prestige in the company, because he could sell booze. But Stuart himself, amazingly enough, only drank non-alcoholic beer. He came out of nowhere. He just showed up in town one day and said he'd come from far away. It was a big deal when he joined their gang of poor neighborhood boys. Stuart was obviously rich, but he kept it simple. He didn't talk much about himself, but he could tell stories about the past of this place, when the Indians fought for their land, when they built the railroad, and when they mined for gold in the mountains. Trouble with the ancestors. Max nodded. Damn it. He wasn't used to complaining. After all, it was humiliating for a man. But then he burst into tears, and he blurted out to Stuart how fed up he was with the stigma of being a trailer park dweller who was doomed in advance. How fed up he was with his parents telling him what to do. How fed up he was with not knowing where to go. My great-grandfather came here from Ireland with just enough money to buy fish and chips and coffee when he got off the ship. He'd been working since he was 10, selling newspapers at 14, and by 40 he owned the largest ranch in Texas. Max rounded his eyes before Stuart had never been frank with any of them. So, you see, the Brummett continued, looking thoughtfully toward the mountains. My grandfather and father already had everything for a successful start by default. He fell silent and Max just stood beside him. It seemed that they just listened to the silence together. Somewhere very, very far away, some animal roared. Max didn't know who it was, maybe a bear, maybe a puma. Understand these sounds of wild nature if you are not a nerdy nerd. What about you? Did you have everything? He finally decided to break the silence. I did. But then my mother died and my father remarried. 4 years ago, he got divorced and she ripped him off. He beat her. And that's why the judge let her take the Maxim. I see, nodded Max, though he actually had even more questions. It was very strange. Perhaps it was the effect of this unusually cold night for the area and the deafening loneliness of being estranged from his own family. But it seemed to him that he and Stuart had known each other for 100 years, and that he could be trusted like no one else. We had one uncle in our family. His name was Jeffrey, and he was cut out of the will after he squandered the money entrusted to him for the business. Was it the woman's fault again? Max suggested. No, Stuart turned and his eyes flashed like those of a wild beast. But it certainly showed. He was obsessed with gold. You've heard of how settlers from east to west sometimes stashed gold in the mountains, hoping to come back for it later. They were afraid they'd be robbed on the way or when they first got to California. Max nodded. He remembered something like that. At school, the teacher was just obsessed with the stories of the first settlers. But I guess she was crazy because she loved to tell all sorts of stories, like caravans stranded in the mountains during the winter, whose inhabitants were slowly going mad from hunger and the realization that they were doomed because even the most experienced rescuers couldn't get to them until spring. My uncle believed there was gold here too. Stuart nodded at the tops of the mountains, which looked like ghostly giants wrapped in black, frozen in the light of the lazy rising moon. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. My mother insisted on a banking career, and my stepmother, she just liked me, if you know what I mean. Max understood, and his eyes widened. I mean, she seduced you. The day after I turned 18, she came to my place. She offered me a cocktail. After the first few sips, I blacked out. I don't think there was anything between us. Stuart grinned wryly. But my dad caught us in bed. That's when he beat her up. He kicked me out. But why did she do it? I guess she just wanted to. And while I was drinking that cocktail, she implied that we could split everything my father owned between the two of us. I suppose if I had been more cooperative and gone to her after we were caught, she would have shared some of the loot with me. Why didn't Dad tell you what happened? No, hitting women is disgusting, but she was asking for it. I didn't want to embarrass myself, Stuart said without a chuckle. And you didn't tell him what it was really like. I did. He didn't believe me. The only thing I have left is my grandfather's trust fund. I'm 22 now. When I turn 25, I'll be able to manage his funds. That was the terms of my grandfather's will. They were silent again for a while. Max didn't know what had prompted Stuart, the enigmatic, soft-spoken, stiff guy who gave everyone the impression of a mysterious wanderer, to be so frank, but he appreciated it. There was something about it, something that gave hope that they were friends now. When I left home, Jeffrey was the only one of my family who took me in. It just so happened that let's just say I didn't live up to the family's expectations. We didn't have any scientists in our family. I decided to become an archaeologist and a historian. Max rounded his eyes. Stuart couldn't be imagined in a cubicle life, so boring. Jeffrey was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer a year ago, stage 4. He died 6 months ago. He fought a long battle. I'm sorry, Max swallowed hard. I'd taken a sabbatical, and before I go back to university, I want to finish what my uncle started. He had a dream, and at least it doesn't have to die. Why are you telling me all this? The question came out of my mouth. Because you seem like a guy I can trust. Stuart smiled, and his fingers ringed with skulls and skewed wolf faces, dropped to Max's shoulder. You're like me when I was younger, and I think we can help each other. Okay, nodded Max, I'll help. But you don't even know what it's about yet. Stuart squinted. What if I want to become a drug lord? Not you. Max grinned. You're definitely not one of the bad guys. That's a bold statement, a hand off my shoulder. I wish you didn't regret it. Well, shall we get back to the others? Stuart pointed to the boys and girls of the 8 men sitting around the fire, chatting merrily, carefree about something. We'll talk about our business later. It's a serious subject and will need time and attention. And I'm sorry I'm acting like an older brother who was left to babysit, but you're already pecking your nose. Max agreed. And he also thought that if he really had such an older brother, his life would be much better. Today was the one day when Alex didn't think he was a fool. No, today he thought he was a genius and the luckiest man alive. At lunch, he had asked to leave work and told his boss that he had a stomach ache. Apparently, the filling of the burrito he had eaten for lunch was stale. The boss took pity and let him go for a few hours. He said he would go to the pharmacy and take something. And he ran as fast as he could to the law office. So that consultation was expensive, and for free one had to sign up in advance. But today fortune was definitely on his side, because Alex managed to cut into a small live queue for a consultation with lawyers who came to town for a while. There were newcomers from a large law firm who were sent here to, so to speak, flaunt charity-free services for the residents of a town full of poor people. And so, squirming in his chair with excitement, Alex shared what had happened. A blonde lawyer in a black and white suit listened to him carefully. No, the only option in your case is to keep the winnings from your wife. So you have to share everything? He asked, and the mood went downhill. Alex came here because he knew that everything that spouses gained in marriage should be divided in half. And he didn't want to add a fat jackpot to the modest gain. But he was also afraid that then it would be worse, so he decided to ask advice from a specialist. And if I prove that I bought it with my salary? He muttered, my hard-earned money, what does she have to do with this? Mr. Walker, the girl sighed patiently. If you decide to collect your winnings after the divorce, I'm afraid you risk losing everything. And she told him about the case. There was such a cunning man. He did so and decided for the fact that he cheated his wife in general, all to give her, that is, and his half of the winnings. Nightmare, Alex muttered. Outrage, he added indignantly. What in the world is going on? Mr. Walker, the lawyer looked at him carefully. In general, this is beyond the scope of my work, but I advise you to contact a financial advisor. He will help you decide what to do with the winnings. Unfortunately, there are many cases when lottery winners. Only, Mr. Walker, don't be offended. But there are many instances where they lose everything they've won very quickly by making reckless spending. And also, I recommend you to keep confidentiality. Do not tell about the winnings of relatives, neighbors, colleagues, or friends. Again, there are many cases when, I get it. Alex grinned grimly, interrupting her. Many cases when everyone wants to suck on other people's money. Well, I know that. I've been living with such a leech myself for years. Well, thank you. And if you want, I will help you choose a lawyer for full support in all your cases, the girl added. Thanks, I'll think about it. Alex got up, shook her hand goodbye, and left the office and the whole building. So that's how it is. So we'll have to share. Though, how I didn't want to do that. But on the other hand, he thought he would still have almost $5 million left. That would be enough to recover from the divorce. Alex went back to work, smiling at his fantasies about a snow-white yacht on which he would sail to Hawaii, taking for a pleasant company of beautiful models. $3,000 is the minimum. Alex walked down the street, clutching the lottery ticket tightly in his pocket. Honey, we've become millionaires. Alex realized it wasn't the best phrase. It was the worst way to explain to his spouse how their life had changed overnight. He wanted to do something different and start from afar, to sit down and talk to Julia carefully, calmly about everything, to remember together how young they were and what hopes and dreams they shared, to remember that once they really loved each other. He wanted to propose to solve everything peacefully. Yes, the initial impulse was dashing. Naomi, go wherever you want, and my half of the winnings would be enough for me. But the closer Alex approached the house, the more greed possessed him. Why half? if it is possible, and more. For this, it was necessary to persuade his wife that there was no need to divorce. We could stay together. After all, now there was a second chance for their family. Alex believed that if Naomi agreed that the money, respectively, as before, would be managed mainly by him, and therefore he would be able to take something from the half that theoretically would be due to his wife. No, Alex realized that she would also have access to the money, but not like in a divorce. And as for the modeling beauties, well, they could wait. He'd just go on vacation one day, alone. They have different vacation tastes anyway. But instead of a calm, planned conversation, Alex barely entered, and as he saw his wife, she sat at the table and cut out coupons, and fell out. "Honey, we're millionaires." Naomi put aside the paper and scissors and looked at him like he was crazy. "It's not funny. Everything at the laundromat went up in price. You bought milk that was almost expired. I think there are rats under the house. And our son is still tangling with these criminals. You have the nerve to make jokes." "I'm not joking." Alex slapped a lottery ticket on the table and a torn sheet from the printed press where the results of the drawing were published. "Here, see for yourself." Naomi looked at him as if he were not just a madman, but already dangerous. She snorted mockingly, but she put on her glasses and started to check this and that. Then she raised a puzzled look at Alex, and then suddenly threw herself on his neck. "That can't be true." "Maybe." He grinned and gently patted his wife on the back. "Maybe." "Oh, how can it be? You have never bought." "I decided to," Alex answered embarrassedly, and a strange warmth flooded his chest. "I don't feel well," he said, grimacing at the pain in his heart. Alex, Naomi, supporting him so that he leaned on her, led him into the bedroom. "Put him on the bed." She frantically searched for heart drops. "Mom, Dad." 10 minutes later, my son's voice came out. "I'd like some money. My sneakers are torn. They're ruined." Alex was still lying on the bed, but he was afraid to move. Naomi held his hand and looked at him sympathetically. But when she heard her son, she pressed her lips together and sniffled. And then she screamed loudly, "Will you calm down or not? You think we're printing money here? Get some glue and seal it up. Other people are working at your age, and all you know is that you're hanging around with bums. You're one to talk." From behind the bedroom door. "We live like bums ourselves, and it's not my fault. And I work. And it's my business that I don't work full-time. And if you're so smart, if you work, then buy your own sneakers." Naomi parried. "Don't fight, please," Alex begged. "It's bad enough as it is. If you don't like the way you live, then take and clean up." Naomi shouted to her son, "You've made a pigsty. Your wife will be poor. Dad's not well, and he's—" "Dad, what happened?" In a moment, Max looked into the bedroom, disheveled and sincerely worried. "Is it his heart again? Do we need an ambulance? How are we going to pay the ambulance?" Naomi shrieked. $3,000 minimum will charge for the call and transportation to the hospital. Do I look like a millionaire?" Max blushed his face, but did not answer his mother, and for that Alex was sincerely grateful to his son. "Okay, I'll clean up now," he said and went out. Naomi continued to sit next to him, holding her husband's hand. "Let's tell him." "Don't be direct right now," she waved him away. "Let him suffer. He's our son." "I know, I gave birth to him myself." Naomi replied, "We'll tell him. We'll have a family dinner tonight and tell him." She smiled. "I found a coupon for chicken. I'll roast it for dinner." "Hang in there," Alex grinned. "Soon we won't have coupons anymore. We'll live like kings." About half an hour later, Alex, despite his wife's warnings, got up and said that he was not a grandfather to lie around all day long. But then he decided not to get too heavy and agreed, while his wife was busy with dinner, to rest a little more. "I'll go to the store myself," said Naomi, who was already packing her purse. "So, where are the coupons?" "Hey you!" She turned to her son, who was still at home, but after his mother's angry shouts, he sat quiet as a mouse. "There were coupons here. Where did you put them?" "I thought it was just trash on the table." Of course it was trash. She had her hands in her sides. "I cleaned the whole kitchen this morning. I found all the candy wrappers you always forget to throw out. So I threw out all the trash I could find." "You took it all out?" Max snapped at me. Vaughn even finished the dishes and swept the floor. "Mom, why are you throwing yourself at me? I do not smoke." do not drink, do not take anything. I don't want you to do any of those things. I would have you then. Naomi waved her hands, but suddenly she stopped. Wait a minute. There was a little red piece of paper on the table. There was a ticket here. I didn't see any tickets, Max shrugged. What ticket? Are you going to the movies? Where? Everything. What? You? Cleaned up? Naomi asked, breathing heavily and separately. I told you I picked up the trash and threw it out. What's wrong, Mom? Are you sick too? You? Naomi slumped down, and it was lucky there was a chair, or she would have fallen on the floor. You threw away $10 million, she added, pointing her finger at her son. You threw away a lottery ticket your father bought, you idiot. Why did I give birth to you? Mom, the young man grabbed his head. Mom, I'll be right back. The garbage truck is still. I don't think it's here yet. I don't think so. Naomi roared, jumping up and rushing out the door. What's wrong? Asked Alex, who looked out of the bedroom and at first thought that his wife and son were just arguing about something again. But when he realized that his tone was raised to the level of a hurricane, he was distracted from watching the TV show. I accidentally threw away the ticket. I'll find it, Max said, running out of the house after his mother. Alex thought that his heart was aching again, that it would stop right now. But what heartish when you can lose $10 million. So he ran after his family. Stop! Stop! Gasping on the run, Alex shouted because the garbage man was ready to tip their tank into the car. Stop! Panting, he bent over with his hands and his knees. Our trash. Excuse me, sir. The garbage man put the tank back in place. Is there a problem? Alex managed to outrun his wife and son. They ran after him. We accidentally threw away my letter of reply from the university. Max blurted out. So we're taking the trash away. We'll look for it. Well, I see, shrugged his shoulders and just got into the cab of the garbage truck and drove away. And the family dragged the tank to their house to look for a ticket. Luckily, it turned up on top of a tangled banana peel. Alex, shaking with pleasure, carefully held it in his hands and then went and put it away in the safest place, where they also kept a stash for a rainy day, that is, in an envelope, which was kept in an album with family photos, quite old from the times of youth. We're almost poor again. Naomi shook her hands and then laughed. What a story. And now, parents, turning the chair backwards, Max saddled up. Explain to me what's going on. Upon hearing everything, Max, contrary to Alex's expectations, didn't react very violently, just nodded and said that it certainly makes a big difference. Can I go to a normal college then? Finally, hesitantly asked. What kind of question, son? Alex said, you'll study in the Ivy League, among the elite. We'll see about that. Naomi pressed her lips together. If the behavior is normal. Wife, what are you talking about, huh? Alex rounded his eyes. What are you doing? It's nothing. Naomi folded her arms across her chest. It's just that people work hard all their lives, and someone, you see, expects to get everything ready to go. But what happened to us? We get these millions for nothing. Alex really couldn't understand his wife's logic. You know, Mom, and some people are only spoiled by money, said Max with a bad squint. Don't give me anything for nothing, or I'll become like you. With these words, the guy just ran out of the house, habitually slammed the door. The glass in the window tinkled pitifully. You shouldn't do that, sighed Alex. You haven't gotten anything yet, but how? It's your own child. I just don't want him to grow up selfish. So I'm going to the store. I still need to get these millions, and today I have to live on something. My husband hasn't learned how to earn money for 20 years. Alex was alone, and he felt sad, and he called himself a fool because he believed at some point that big money in the family would change something for the better. And they had not even had time to be in his hands yet, and they had brought a new discord. Max, putting his hands in the pockets of his jacket and pulling the hood of his sweatshirt over his head, stomped down the street. Yeah, and this is his own mother? It would be better to be an orphan than with such a mom. In general, he often thought about how he could have a good life if he were rich. And now, it would seem that he was lucky enough. But what happened in the end? The guy grinned unhappily, remembering that he had once heard that some millionaires bring up their children in austerity and economy. For example, They themselves fly first class and children economy. No money to go, child. Work in a diner to buy new sneakers. Max snorted under his nose. He knew exactly what if. No, not like that. That when he himself became rich, his children would have the best of everything. They wouldn't need anything. And he would spoil his wife. That's the right thing to do. Right now, his friend was waiting for him. He and Stuart had arranged to meet him at a pizza place. Sorry, I'm late, Max said, sitting down at the table. Parents again. If only as again. He took off his hood, ran it through his hair, trying to smooth it out, but he shook it even more, and then he went and told me about the winnings. Stuart reacted with an arched eyebrow and a slight chuckle. Hang on, it's going to get worse, but in principle, you can turn things in your favor. Purely legally, you're entitled to your piece of the pie. Really? Max is tense. Theoretically, probably, but what about getting other money? Even more, and it'll all be yours alone. And mine. We'll split it fairly 50-50. Max sipped the milkshake that had just arrived along with a hot, fresh out of the oven chicken and pineapple pizza. No, he trusted Stuart, but the offer sounded ambiguous. Are you suggesting something criminal? Or were you just joking about it at the time? Would you have said yes if I'd asked you? I don't know, Max looked away. I'm sick of it. I can't take it anymore. No, it's legal, but it's classified, and it could really make us both rich. Literally. And Stuart started talking. Turns out Uncle Jeffrey had spent his life researching the history of one group of settlers. Among them was a man named Ben Miles. He was moving to California like everyone else for a better life, but he also had a lot of capital to support it. And according to his diary entries before he set out, he converted that capital not into the cattle that many settlers moved with them, but into pure gold. And when it became clear that they were stranded in the mountains, he hid the gold in one of the caves. He believed that in the spring they would be rescued, and then he would quietly return. He did not want to keep the gold to himself, fearing that those who would come to rescue them could not withstand the temptation to take the coins and bars from a weakened man, especially since there were forests and mountains around. There would be no one to know what really happened. But only Miles' hopes were not destined to come true. That winter was particularly harsh, and in the spring the search party found only the skeletons of the settlers. In Ben's diary, as well as his last letter, only the weather and time spoiled the records, and nobody could make out the exact landmarks of the place where the gold was hidden. But they kept looking for it. Over time, the story came to be seen as a legend. But Uncle Jeffrey was convinced of its reality, and before his death told everything he knew to Stuart, and also gave him all the results of his years of work. How much gold is there? Max asked in a whisper. 150 million. Stuart replied in a mysterious whisper and winked. But. Max was getting excited. Why did you choose me? Don't you need some historians, archaeologists to help you? You know, the last few years have made me look at life differently. In principle, it's always easier to work as a team, but you can do it alone. And besides, I don't want to share my success with just anyone. And you, believe it or not, you're the first person I can call my friend. But we haven't known each other that long. So, there's something about you, some kind of energy, maybe? Stuart smiled. You're a good guy, Max, and why not share that gold with you? So, what do you say? Are you with me? I'm with you. Max had made his final decision. Yes, it all sounded fantastic. But now, on the eve of adulthood, when do you make a big change? And even if there was nothing to be found, it would be his adventure. Max is just tired of living like his parents, to follow a predetermined, safe, and predictable path. He decided to take a risk, and now he felt stronger and more inspired than ever. Hi, I heard you were sick. Are you feeling better? Alex almost jumped up. He was just setting up in the staff room with his usual hamburger for a snack. And then Jessica walked up to him. Hi, yeah, better. Thank you. Poor thing, she said, twirling a curl around her finger. Jessica was especially good today, wearing jeans so low-slung that they exposed her thigh bones and a scarlet strapless knit top. A doll, in a word. I hear you're a lucky guy, she smiled broadly. What? Alex didn't understand, distracting himself from the hamburger again. No reason. They say you won the lottery. What? Who says that? Alex rounded his eyes, and that was bad, very bad. Bill. Bill's got something wrong. Did he? Jessica squinted slyly like a fox, smelling at chicken, not in feathers, but already roasted. That's right. I didn't win anything. What about you? Do you have any other questions for me? No, I just came to check on your health. She winked at him. It's a shame that such a charming man is so unhappily married. She didn't explain why she had such an opinion about his marriage and just left. And Alex was left to finish his cold hamburger. He caught Bill as soon as they saw each other and pulled him aside between the shelves. Why are you spreading gossip? What are you talking about? Bill rounded his eyes because he was a little frightened by the pressure of his acquaintance grabbing him by the shirt. That I won the lottery. You didn't? No, of course not. Alex really hoped that his voice sounded convincing. But I saw you all dragging the trash can. And oh, don't give me that letter to my son bullshit. What college? He's barely out of high school. What else would you be so eager to find in a trash can? A letter from the IRS. So, come on, did you win? Well, I won. Alex let go of Bill's shirt and looked down. I'm just scared to talk about it, and we didn't get anything. How much? Bill's eyes were glistening greedily. I should have gotten that ticket myself. You're new at this, aren't you? Beginner's luck. Big money, Alex sighed. It's even scary to think about the amount of money we'll have on our hands, given our current situation. How much? $12,000, sighed Alex even more heavily. Him. After some silence, Bill reacted. Not bad, and I thought you hit the jackpot. And why would I keep going to work then? Alex waved his hands. I would have quit the same day. We would live on the stash until we get the winnings. And so, even offended, all the money will go on loans and debts. Well, maybe we'll have some leftover. Maybe we'll go on a weekend vacation somewhere near here on the lake. Maybe, he finished and finally looked at Bill. And he realized he believed him. Alex was a man not used to intrigue and lie, but right now he was ready to believe himself. What are you doing here? Tom, one of the bosses, looked between the racks. Do you think forklifts can work by themselves? We're going. Alex waved away and finally exhaled with relief. It seems that their secret was still a secret. On the way home, Alex realized that a couple of days had been spent on thinking. It's nothing, but there was nothing to drag out further. So having returned home, he informed his family that perhaps it was time to send the ticket to the office of the company, where the organization, the creator of the lottery, was located. How about taking it in person? That's more reliable, Naomi suggested. I know, but it's very far away. Let's do it by letter. Well, and call them, of course, said Alex. And immediately, without delay, dialed the right number. They answered quickly, listened attentively, and asked to dictate the ticket number and some other information. They confirmed that it was a winning ticket and congratulated him. They told me how to send the ticket and told me to take a picture with it at home. But most importantly, they said that in just a few days you can come to the office for the money. Alex did everything he needed to do, literally the next day. It was a day off, and he decided to walk around the city a little. Not that he didn't want to go home, but he was in the mood for a walk and a think. His feet carried him to the center, and suddenly, at first Alex thought that he was mistaken and also thought that there are coincidences in the world. A woman who looked like his wife, but only prettier, came out of the beauty salon. Her hands were full of bags, and not ordinary store bags, but such paper, stylish, in which things from expensive stores are usually packed. But then he squinted his eyes and, Naomi, you. He was speechless. Yes, it was her own wife, but how she had changed. First of all, she had changed her color into a cool blonde and her hair shone like silk. Secondly, usually she did not wear makeup, but now her lips were highlighted with scarlet lipstick and her eyes with smoky shadows. It was beautiful, bright, youthful. But Naomi also seemed more aggressive this way. And where are the usual jeans and knitwear? Now her wife was wearing a light dress and heeled boots and a gold pendant around her neck, plus earrings. And Alex remembered exactly that all the gold had been pawned a long time ago. But could it be costume jewelry? However, Some suspicions, vague such thoughts began to rumble in his head. "Well there," said the wife, embarrassed, and fixed her hair. "I decided that since I'm a millionaire now, it's time to change." "Yule," Alex swallowed hard. "Where did you get the money from? We've only got to go to get the winnings, haven't we?" "What are you? Where from?" "Oh, come on." The wife waved away and pouted her lips capriciously. Alex didn't like that look on her face at all. Jessica would have been allowed it because she was young and beautiful. And his Naomi, well, she should have recognized that she had to stop being young. What's with all the wiggling and the bright lips and the deep cleavage? "Yes, I borrowed it," she added nervously. "And where did they give it to you?" Alex asked thoughtfully. He was not a fan of shopping and even less of beauty salons, but he could estimate very roughly that the whole appearance of his wife and the contents of the bags cost a lot. And to borrow, by the way, it is unclear who borrowed wealthy acquaintances of the Walkers did not have. Well, you know, the wife was very suspicious. I decided that Pedro could help. I told him that we would have the money later and he borrowed. "Pedro." Alex's exclamation startled the pigeons, who were scattering on the pavement looking for crumbs, and the passers-by who were walking nearby looked at him as if he were crazy. "Are you out of your mind?" The thing was, Pedro was the name of one, a man with a dark reputation. He ran a weird bar and nightclub where they sold rumored booze and other stuff that could get you in big trouble with the police. And there also worked strippers, very cheap girls. And there were regular fights, and, in general, they said about Pedro that he was a kind of mafioso, but too scumbag and stupid at the same time to be a real gangster. And until today, Alex didn't realize that he was married to a woman who had enough brains. No, it's more accurate to say, who had no brains at all, because she thought to borrow money from Pedro, and even to tell him about winning the lottery. Say it's a bad joke, Alex felt his eyelids start to twitch. "Well, I'm sorry," his wife pressed her lips and quickly, Maxley became like her former self, dissatisfied with everything in the world and her husband in the first place, Yulka. "You? I have no words." Alexa grabbed his head. We are going to go the day after tomorrow. Couldn't you wait a couple of days and then spend your money?" "Not a couple," the wife pouted. Now Naomi was almost crying. "You go to the office with the ticket, there, take a picture. And to get the winnings, it will take weeks." "So what?" Alex was indignant. "Couldn't you do without all this stuff?" He waved his hands, as if describing with gestures the image of his wife and her purchases. "Couldn't you live without this stuff?" For some time, the couple stood opposite each other in menacing silence. Alex was shocked by the deed of his other half. Naomi was boiling in burning resentment, but finally, each of the parties managed to overcome their feelings. "Okay, I'll go to the stores and return everything. Just." Naomi smiled and rubbed her eyes. Her mascara was smeared. "You can't go back to the beauty parlor." "No way." Alex waved his hand, but without anger. "Leave your rags. But as soon as we get the winnings, we'll return every cent to Pedro. Deal? And then we can get out of here." "Leave? Where? Why? Why do you say that? What about me? What about my opinion? Like your wife is a fishing rod. Wherever you want to go, there you go." Naomi gibbered, walking next to Alex. "Yuck, it's heavy. Give me a hand." "What a man. His wife is pulling heavy things, and he doesn't care." Alex swallowed the phrase that she bought it all and was going to carry it home alone, and even scraped up enough patience and mental harmony to explain what he said. Yes, he thinks it's best for them to move to another city where they can start over. The winnings are great, but you have to handle that kind of money all the more carefully. You'd have to buy a house, that's one thing. Then, of course, to pay for your son's education, that's two. Still need to put yourself in savings for retirement time. Well, and for life, you can try to open a business. "I wanted to go on a cruise to the Caribbean," Naomi said, and Alex had the impression that she had missed everything he said. "We'll see," Alex said. "Maybe we could go." "Yeah, we could, I guess." The whole family. They drove the rest of the way to their street in silence. And then, Alex rounded his eyes because their son's motorcycle slowed down at one of the trailer houses and Jessica jumped off it. She gave Max a familiar gesture of a kiss on the cheek, then ran up the steps and into her house. "Are you out of your mind?" Alex attacked his son, who was calmly walking along the road, pushing the motorcycle next to the walker's house. That's right, Naomi supported him. Yes, it's a girl. Don't you think it's a little late to teach me? I'm of age, Max snapped at her. What kind of an adult are you? You're still a lazy bum. And then you won't even get a drink at the bar. Does Jessica look like a beer? His son asked with a mocking tone. She looks like, Naomi started to say, but stopped under her son's hard stare. Shut up, he said. Shut your mouth. You have no right to say anything about my life. Son, Naomi stopped in shock. How do you talk to your mother? Alex swung at his son. And as you brought me up, so I communicate. Max dodged. You know what? I'm sick of it. You reproach me with the fact that I'm not an excellent student, with the fact that I'm not like you see. What? You can't stand the fact that I'm still living with you. And you know what? I'm leaving home today. That's it. I'll be independent as you wanted. Having said that, Max saddled the motorcycle, pressed the gas, and in the next moment disappeared behind the street corner. Son, Naomi whispered after him, and then cried. Nothing. Alex swallowed hard. Nothing. He'll get over it and come back. Don't worry. Where will he go? Will he go to his friends? He'll get bored in a couple of days. He'll run back to a clean house, home-cooked food. Nothing. He's still young. We'll mind our own business, won't we? He asked. Naomi nodded, sniffing her nose, and they went home. Alex had been a parent for too long not to know that even if it seems that your child is away from you forever, it is almost certainly necessary to give him some time to realize his mistakes, but at least to try to return to the family. Max endured exactly 24 hours and curled up the next day exactly in time for dinner. Dad, I was just, anyway, speaking, stomping around the doorstep. Okay, don't talk philosophy to me here, Alex said sternly, though he wanted to laugh and tell the boy that he might have grown physically, but he was still a fool in some places. Mom fried the chicken again. Apologize, just quickly. Then wash your hands and go to the table. Got it? Got it, Max answered and slipped past his father into the trailer. His and Naomi's voices were heard. Then the faucet opened in the bathroom and the sound in the trailer was fantastic. And finally, we sat down to dinner. We decided to take the bus to the next town. We decided that Naomi and Alex, as the main ticket holders, wouldn't have to go. Can I leave you alone for a couple of days? Alex asked his son. Won't you make a mess at home? I won't, Max answered. And his eyes were the most honest because he was not going to do anything at home. And as for his plans about things outside the house, the street, and even the whole city, his parents didn't say anything about it. They weren't supposed to know about it at all. Max believed that first, he was old enough to make such decisions on his own, and second, that he had an adult friend and protector, his mentor Stuart. What do we tell people, the neighbors? Naomi wondered. Why should we tell them anything? Why should we tell them anything? Alex was indignant. But you said yourself that the lawyer said that we need this confidentiality. If it's so necessary, then let's say that we went to the dentist. Because in another city, my acquaintance, he is a dentist, out loud thought out a realistic version for all curious Alex. And he is ready to give us a discount on filling. Here, how it fits? And you, Dad, are just a master of lies, smiled Max. You just don't get used to lying. He sent his son a serious look. And then everyone got down to dinner without talking. Moreover, Naomi was in such a good mood that she even let her husband into the kitchen and he baked an apple pie. The next morning we left. They took a bus to the desired city without any adventures. As soon as they got off the bus, Alex went into his bag and handed his wife a voluminous scarf and sunglasses. The same things, plus a cap, he got for himself. What's that for? Disguise. You want to shine your face in front of all the gawkers? You think we're gonna get a bunch of reporters out there? Naomi gasped, because we're lottery winners? Oh, I'm wearing makeup like I'm going to the market. Alex only shook his head and said that they should hurry up. He didn't show it, but he was really nervous. However, contrary to expectations, neither on the street in front of the business center, nor in the office of the company organizer of the lottery, they were not met by journalists in the assortment. But they were met by a smiling manager named Barry, who arrived at the appointed time. And having seated the dear guest in his office, Barry began to explain to them all the nuances of receiving the winnings. Do they want to take it all at once, paying more tax, or to receive the winnings in installments over many years, paying less tax? The spouses responded in agreement that they want to take it all at once. Do we need the help of a financial advisor? What do you think we are, our children? Naama replied importantly, we'll figure it out on our own. Alex made a note in his mind to hire a financial advisor at least to manage his share of the winnings. Barry asked if they wanted to remain anonymous or if they wanted an in-depth interview. Either way, one should be photographed with a huge, so to speak, revealing lottery ticket. But if you want, you can hide your face in the picture, for example, by wearing a mask. Let's get the mask, Alex blurted out. Okay, smiled Barry. We have a few keepsakes for those who win. Do they often win a lot? Naomi asked. No, certainly not like you. Barry waved his hands. But just imagine, there are many superstitious people, even those who want to keep 10,000 a secret. Now, first of all, here are the papers. I need your signatures on all 3 copies, and then let's take a picture of you. They also discussed the terms of transferring the money, to which account to do it. Naomi insisted that half of it should be given in cash. Alex chose the bank account. Then we went to take the picture. Alex felt a bit silly in a plastic zebra mask, but he was comforted by the fact that his wife looked silly in a monkey mask. They were handed a giant cardboard ticket on which they had written 10 million in numbers with a marker. The host stood up and beside them and smiled broadly. And then, well, everything happened quickly. Alex didn't even have time to be scared. He was only in shock, because suddenly the doors to the studio were literally taken out. They were kicked out by the special forces. Everyone fell on the floor, and then, in general, they and the staff of the same operator, for example, were not touched. But Barry went somewhere, and then they explained to the walkers that here's the deal. In general, the company organizer of the lottery, as it turned out, was involved in a big and dirty case of money laundering from the Colombian mafia. And in fact, the winnings could have been given away. The company planned to spend such a little of the really gigantic funds rotating on its accounts, but it was impossible because, as were sure those who crushed the company now, all the funds were obtained by criminal means. Which meant, well, they had to be confiscated. That is, Alex understood little from what was said, from the bizarre and sounding as if in an alien language explanations. We didn't win. Yes and no at the same time, sighed the lawyer. His name was James, and he explained, was supposed to represent all the people affected by this company in the upcoming big case. Yes, some of the lotteries were conducted in violation of some rules, so people could get compensation for the sums of money spent on unwinnable lottery tickets. Those who had already received their winnings and spent them, by the way, they were told that nothing would happen, that is, they were not going to be forced to return the money. Alex and Naomi were told that they could get back the money spent on the ticket. And in case of a favorable development of events, they can even apply to get compensation for moral damage. What the hell is going on, Ed? Alex exclaimed heartily. The only time in my life I dared to buy a ticket, hit the jackpot, and then it turns out to be not real. I can't believe it. Naomi said in a trembling voice. Is there really nothing that can be done? I'm afraid not. James replied sympathetically. I sincerely sympathize with you. You must have counted on that money a lot. Yes, Alex muttered. He suddenly thought that Pedro would hardly be satisfied with the answer that things had turned out this way, so he would have to pay back the debt. And now it was very, very scary to think about how much his wife had managed to spend. Finally, when all the formalities were over, the Walker couple had the opportunity to return home. They took the latest flight on the bus just to get back as soon as possible. They went physically and mentally exhausted, hungry, irritated, and disappointed in life to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. In general, they had originally planned to spend the night in the city, staying in a hotel. But the plans, as fate mockingly decreed, changed so quickly that they returned on the very last flight and arrived at the house in the night. Alex unlocked the door, entered. Quiet. Don't wake up your son. Let him sleep. Fussing all day long, young people, Alex said with fatherly concern. Alex, he heard his wife's voice when he had already reached the dark corridor to the bedroom. And Max is not home. What do you mean? Alex was confused. He ran away to someone else for a sleepover again, the bastard. A lamp lit up under the ceiling. Alex squeezed his eyes shut, blinked at the light, and then saw a folded notebook in his wife's hands. His heart pricked with a bad feeling. He's writing. He's writing. He's better. Naomi held out the note as if it was not a message from her son, but, for example, a drawing of an adder that could come to life and sting under the influence of some malicious magic. Alex thought it would be a good idea to put on his glasses. Then he remembered that he had taken them on a trip and forgot them because at some point on the way home he urgently went to his bag for medicine. His heart whimpered, and Alex, until it let go, frantically recounted in his mind all the symptoms of an impending heart attack. But now it seemed he was not in danger of a heart attack. He just felt so dreary. It seemed that the whole life suddenly went wrong. Dreams of a happy and rich life collapsed. The only son left home again, and it seems that in the future it will be even more difficult to communicate with him. In general, judging by the content of the letter, Max was not so far from home in the geographical scale, but the feeling was as if the absent-minded son ran away to the end of the world. And in general, the content of the letter was extremely strange. In it, Max apologized to his parents for the fact that he was bad at school and disgusting behavior in personal communication with them, and expressed hopes, by the way supported by many exclamation marks, that one day everything would change. Everything would change so that they would be able to leave their former life and start again as one big and friendly family. He wrote that he had found someone to live with in town and that he had to think about everything. "I was an old fool," Alex exclaimed. "I should have just taken him with me." "Alex, what exactly does he write?" Naomi asked in a trembling voice, and when her husband handed her the note to read, Naomi clutched her heart. "Strange." "What's weird? That the son is a jerk?" Alex sighed. "No. This one, see. He wrote a poem at the end. Well, at least he's creative. Maybe he'll become a poet." "Alex," Naomi shook her head. "Oh, come on. Come on. Put some tea on, and I'll call around. Maybe he's in the hands of someone we know. Martin, his friend. Maybe he's with him. Or Ellis." "Why are you looking at me like that? She's a normal girl. Do whatever you want." Alex waved his hand. He just wanted to stay by himself and think about everything. After a quick tea and a snack, the couple went to bed. The next morning, Naomi said that she would go to the stores to hand over most of the things she had bought, because, fortunately, she hadn't cut the tags off them yet, and therefore they should be accepted and refunded. "It's a pity, of course," sighed the wife, taking out of the closet dress color zebra and putting it in a bag. "Well, come on. Still not to age to wear such a thing. And where do I dress up? I'm not old enough." So, Alex realized with surprise that he felt sorry for his wife, in the sense that she was upset that she can't dress nicely, and he made a mental note in his mind to spend better, to find an additional part-time job, but to please his wife in the near future to give her money to buy herself some new clothes. And time passed, and the son did not return. He didn't call. A strong cold wind blew from the mountains in the evening, and low clouds seemed ready to pour rain or maybe even sprinkle the first snow. "All right, that's enough," Naomi said, taking her jacket off the rack. "I'm going to the sheriff's office. My son is missing. He hasn't even called. No, something's definitely happened to him, and no one I know has seen him." "I'm coming too," said Alex, who suddenly realized with frightening clarity that Max had never really left home for so long. Yes, he wrote that he would live somewhere, but where? It was impossible to bear this uncertainty any longer, and on the heart became immensely, boundlessly anxious. And what if they missed the time, and while he was waiting, the parents themselves are so absent-minded, angry at his son? Something bad has already happened to him. We reached the police station quickly, and here, however, we had to wait because some man with a group of support in the person of two women, must be his wife and mother-in-law, as well as a loudly yapping small dog, sitting in the purse of the latter, was indignant about the wrongly allegedly issued fines and the fact that his car was driven away to a special parking lot. "Can we talk to someone quickly?" Alex waved his hands, attracting the attention of one of the officers who was standing by the coffee machine. "Yes, sir. What can I do for you?" A tall, dark-skinned guy answered. "Officer Jerry Smith. What's your emergency? Our son is missing, Naomi exclaimed. We had a fight and it's my fault. The woman, unable to hold back her feelings, cried. It's all my fault. I didn't notice how bad he was feeling. And now my Max has decided he'd rather leave home. Ma'am, it's gonna be okay. Sit down and here, maybe some water. Officer Jerry spoke to her in a friendly manner. Now tell me in order, how old is your son? When did he go missing? Any idea where he might have gone? Interrupting each other at times, the couple recounted everything that had happened recently between them and Max. Actually, since he's an adult, we can't find him and bring him home. You understand that, don't you? I know everything, Alex said, but is there nothing that can be done? Understand, he used to take offense, then he came back. We called all the friends and acquaintances at whom he could stay. He is nowhere to be found. And this bad company, we're afraid something might happen to him. And here's another, a note. Sniffling, Naomi held out a crumpled piece of paper. Jerry read it, then read it again, frowned. Veronica? He called out, and a minute later a female officer came up to them. Take a look at this. What are you talking about? Alex asked. The female officer walked over to them. Jerry briefly told her what had happened, and added, looking sternly at the parents of the missing young man, that theoretically they could find him, but next they could only make sure that he was okay. They can tell him that they found him at his parents' request, but no more. You see, your son included a poem in the note, and Jerry hesitated. Could it be some kind of hidden message too? You said it was a strange thing for him to do. Hey, I know that poem, Veronica exclaimed. It's from my childhood when I was about 14. What do you mean? Alex asked. Here, stretched Veronica. Exactly. Listen. Where the heart stops, where the sun kisses the puma, where I'll find peace, where I'll dance under the moon. When she finished reading, Veronica looked at Alex and Naomi. In the early 19th century, there was a poet. He published poems signed as anonymous, and in them he praised the local beauty of nature. For some reason, your son cited a passage from a poem about our mountains, and as far as I know, he's pointing to Puma Rock. That's not good. Jerry shook his head. You mean he could be there? Naomi grasped at a glimmer of hope. We can't know that for sure, ma'am. Jerry began cautiously. We'll find out for sure, and we'll send out a search party. But what? Just say it. Alex was sick of the unknown and was ready to grab the officer by the collar of his uniform shirt and shake him so that he would stop stalling and tell the truth. Unfortunately, it looks like your son is out of town. We are talking about an inaccessible and dangerous place here. The Puma Cliff is not allowed to be climbed at all this time of year. There's often icing present, and even professional hikers risked serious injury. And your son, ma'am, sir, he's not a professional, is he? No. Naomi shook her head. My Max is a quiet, ordinary homeboy. He just can't survive in the mountains. Please save him. Jerry, hey Jerry. Another cop flew up to the little group. Well, one of Pedro's men is badly hurt, and I think you ought to see this. Did that idiot decide to use a gun after all? Jerry raised an eyebrow. No, I think something more serious happened. Aren't you going to look for my son? Naomi grabbed the arm of the officer who was about to leave. Ma'am, Veronica will help you fill out the appropriate paperwork and make sure the search begins as soon as possible. But I have to step away right now. I've been hoping for a long time that I'd have a chance to capture this Pedro freak. And if there's an excuse, I won't miss it for anything. Max could only think of one thing. Everything he had done in the last 24 hours or so had been a mistake. He had never been so wrong in his life. But the worst thing was that he also knew that most likely he would not be able to fix anything. Lying on his back, the guy looked up at the sky. From the smoky clouds, the first snowflakes were falling. Max had lived in these parts all his life, and as any old-timer understood for sure that soon these rare snowflakes would turn into a full-fledged snowfall, and the air temperature would still drop. And then, well, if to be realistic, he would probably be dead by morning. After all, hypothermia coupled with great blood loss is no joke. Max coughed and his chest ached. It seemed that his heart was beating so hard that it would break his ribs. "I wonder how many of my ribs are broken," thought Max. And also, although it was completely inappropriate, but the guy smiled. What an idiot. He went for the gold, they call it. And how does it end for him and Stuart? Max, sighing cautiously, turned his head. He could see Stuart. There he was lying down in the fallen leaves, and it seemed that he wasn't breathing at all. And just a couple of meters away from them, they could see the entrance to the cave. And there the fire they had built was burning out, giving the darkness and cold the rest of the heat and light. Max thought about how great in life is the importance of coincidences and how one event can, like a fallen dominoes, lead to many other events. And how well it had all started. Stuart gave the impression of a seasoned traveler. He brought everything they needed, from sleeping bags and food supplies to first aid kits and flares. They had old and new maps, a compass. In general, everything they needed. They moved down into the mountains secretly without attracting anyone's attention, and it was certainly the right decision. They climbed and climbed, sometimes making breaks. About halfway up, Max turned around and marveled at how tiny the city below seemed. It looked like a toy. He could have sworn that this was one of the most breathtaking sights of his life. Finally, they came to their destination on the Puma Cliff. It was here, according to Jeffrey and Stuart's research, that the gold was supposed to be hidden. Max felt cooler than he had on New Year's morning when he expected to find presents from his parents under the tree. He was ready to start searching right away. Why wait? Why wait? With many millions of dollars at his fingertips. But Stuart said they needed to rest. There was a lot of work to be done and they needed to be in shape because they might have to go a little deeper into the cave. Max fidgeted as if on pins and needles while his friend built a fire, cooked them food. They had a snack, chatted on topics that had nothing to do with what had brought them here. And then, finally, they started the real treasure hunt. Max was breathless with excitement and couldn't get rid of the thought that they wouldn't find anything here. But then, it turned out that from the cave there was a narrow passage. It was hidden by stones, and behind it there was another cave. And there, in general, they found gold. The rays of the lantern picked out the treasure and Max screamed with delight. Stuart put his palm over his mouth and told him to shut up, that it was bad luck, and that his screams might attract a predator. They left the caves. They covered the entrance to the far one. Stuart said that they could take some of the gold down at once, but they would have to come back for the rest. Max agreed. They tossed some twigs into the fire and thought they would rest a bit and get to work, but suddenly people jumped out of the bushes. Max didn't understand at first who it was and even took them for tourists, or for those who found out that they were looking for gold and followed them. But they weren't tourists or treasure hunters. They were some of the most suspicious-looking types, and one of them, to Max's disgust, was familiar. Pedro was the man the whole town hated, but the cops, unfortunately, didn't have enough evidence to get in yet. One look at Stuart was enough for Max to realize he was assessing the situation, and it looked like they had a pretty good chance 3 against 2. That's good. And then Pedro told him why they were here and Max's jaw dropped. It turned out that Max's mother had borrowed money from the bandit, and she'd blabbed to him about the lottery winning, so he'd been following Max because he decided to kidnap him and demand a ransom. "You were never alone," Pedro grinned. "Well, I'll have to take you and your friend. We'll get something for him too." "I'm afraid you won't find anyone willing to pay for me," grinned Stuart grimly. "Then we'll have to get rid of you," Pedro shrugged. And in the next instant there would have been a fight, but like lightning a puma came out of the bushes. Max even had time to marvel at the graceful power of its flight. The animal jumped a great distance and came down to the ground, striking one of Pedro's henchmen on the leg with its paw. The man howled in pain. Then a shot rang out. The puma bounced back with a roar. And Pedro and 2 of his men rushed down the mountain. The puma, the huge cat, froze, wiggling its ears and obviously deciding what to do to run after its prey, which had proved that it could resist or to stay here, where there was another prey, perhaps more defenseless, and the cougar chose the latter. Slowly, so that there was a chance to admire the muscles rolling under the silky fur, it stepped towards Max and Stuart. "Freeze," Stuart said. "Don't turn your back on her. I'm going to try to reach the cave now." "A fire. She must be scared of the fire." It's our only chance. No, Max's teeth were chattering with fear. You mustn't do this. I'd rather. I've got no one anyway. Are you an idiot? My parents don't care about me. They can't solve their own problems, Max said with a desperate defiance of fate. And you, study, scientific career. You have more reasons to survive than me. And without giving his friend any more time to argue, Max rushed towards the cave. And of course he lost. In the next few moments, several things happened. Secondly, Max thought that he should not really show his back, but should have kept eye contact with the beast. For the umpteenth time in his life, his impulsiveness had failed him. Secondly, Max felt a powerful blow of a heavy body and was thrown to the ground. He barely managed to roll over on his back. He had heard somewhere that wild cats try to get to the throat first. But this particular puma suddenly bit somewhere in the ribs, and wild pain mixed with the same surprise. Max tried to struggle. Then he saw a burning stick flickering behind the puma. Stuart had brought it from the cave, and now he was just trying to fight his friend off. The puma roared and turned around to attack the other man. Max didn't see what happened, but he only realized that Stuart was lying motionless. He dropped the stick and the fire went out. "Hey you!" Max shouted with all his might. "I'm over here." The cougar turned around. I must be hallucinating, Max thought. If it seems that the beast is looking meaningfully and as if taunting, you came here in vain. In vain you coveted the gold that is cursed. Now you will join those who left their bones here forever, chasing after gold, and so you should. You're wrong, muttered Max, seeing the cougar slowly creeping toward him with no other intention than to finish what he'd started. You stupid cat, whispered the guy, and then lost consciousness, and on the verge of falling into darkness. He wished only one thing, that the faint was deep enough to not feel much pain when the cougar would take that very last bite, after which everything would be over for him. Max was very surprised that he was still alive. Yes, he was definitely alive. True, he couldn't move. It was too painful, and he was too tired. And besides, it seemed that with every moment his body was being poured with such a heaviness, which at the same time brought a strange relief. The guy blinked often. Snowflakes fell on his face. High up in the dark sky, the moon was shining, but also from behind the mountain range, the sun was slowly rising. They lay here all night. He knew the cougar had gone. Why? Who would understand a wild animal? Maybe it just doesn't feed on humans. Or did it decide that it had done enough and they were finished anyway? Max thought about the fact that it was actually ending in a very stupid way. They had found gold after all. It could have changed their lives so much. Also, it was worth recognizing. It would be such a solid historical discovery. So now what? They'll be celebrated as the last victims of the cursed gold. After all, it will surely be discovered the passage to the second cave they disguised so poorly. And then Max realized that he really wanted to sleep. It seemed that it was enough just to dive into the saving sleep, and there would be no more cold and pain. There would be just peace, and before giving himself up to it, it seemed to him that he was seeing hallucinations again, because he felt the barking of dogs and that people came out from behind the trees. He felt that a man was leaning over him, shining a flashlight in his eyes and ordering him not to sleep, to stay with them. Max found a little more strength to smile and still fell asleep. Alex and Naomi sat at their son's bedside, the third day almost without sleep. The doctor said that it was a miracle that both guys were incredibly lucky that the cougar didn't hit anything vital. But of course, it had shaken them badly and many scars could not be removed. The doctors also said that if the guys had been found a couple of hours later, there would have been almost no chance to save them. Max was kept on powerful painkillers. He was incredibly bad both from injuries and from the side effects of powerful drugs. But finally, after a day, the doctors announced that he was on the mend. Naomi and Alex practically never left the hospital. They just refused to do so, even though the doctors said that they had better get some rest themselves. "Mom, Dad?" The couple shuddered, hearing the weak voice of their son. They dozed off a little. "Son," Naomi cried again, now with joy, and rushed to his bed. "My boy." "Hello, son," said Alex, and in an impulse, he wanted to take the boy's hand, but he wrinkled it. Any movement or touch caused a searing pain. "I'm sorry," Alex said hastily. "How are you?" "Alive, it seems," Max smiled weakly, but then his face contorted with anxiety. Stuart. He's alive too. He's fine. They're treating him. Alex said hurriedly. You asked about him all the time while you were raving about him. I thought you were going to call your parents, not him. He's my best and only real friend, Max said. I thought you didn't need me at all. You're such an idiot. Naomi said. We love you very much, son. They talked some more about the treatment that would be necessary in the future, about what the doctor saw in the future. How did you win? Did you get it? Max asked with a smile. Well, actually, Naomi looked at her husband. Alex nodded, and she decided to tell how everything happened and how they not only lost the money, but now they also owed. I'm sorry, this is probably a bad time. I was distracted from the conversation by a familiar man. It was Officer Jerry, standing in the doorway of the room. But I'm on a break right now, and I thought I should stop by and... Hey, kid. He smiled at Max. You're a hero. Why would I be? Max was surprised. Not everyone can stand up to a cougar. Stuart is the one to praise. If it hadn't been for him, it would have eaten me for sure. I've already talked to him, Jerry nodded. Do you have a minute? I won't bore you too much, will I? Come in, Max said, and Jerry came in, pulling up a chair. He spoke and said that he had overheard the end of the conversation with his parents. And I must say that the repayment of Pedro's debt could certainly wait now, because that scoundrel has been arrested. His man, the one who was bitten first by the puma, has fallen into such a state that while the doctors were treating his wounds, he sold out his boss, as they say, with all his guts. And thanks to the fact that he pointed out where and how Pedro was making his illegal deals, where he kept his weapons and some illegal stuff, thanks to all this, it was possible to arrest him. We'd also talked to Stuart about the gold, kid, Jerry said. Don't worry, it's down, it's safe. What gold? I don't understand. What are you talking about? Asked Naomi. Wow, grinned Jerry. So your parents don't know what you and your buddy were up to and what you found? No, I haven't had a chance to tell them yet. Max answered and didn't hesitate to tell his parents about how Stuart had shared his plans to find the cursed treasure. Oh, it doesn't matter. You're alive. We don't need that gold. It's the reason for what happened to you. Naomi felt tearful again. No, Mom. I personally need the gold, Max replied seriously. Stuart explained that we are owed a lot of what we found. You're a business-minded guy, Jerry nodded. I am. I think you're going to be several tens of millions richer in the next few months. But since you don't have insurance, you need the money right now. Anyway, the mayor has decided to give you some help, so to speak. So get well and don't worry about a thing. All right, get some rest. Jerry was about to leave the room, but turned around with a sly grin. By the way, journalists are already on duty at the door of the clinic. They can't wait to interview the guys who not only neutralized the bandits, but also fought a cougar. But it wasn't like that, Max exclaimed. There's no stopping the media's fantasies, kid, chuckled Jerry. You and Stuart will have to get used to living like celebrities now. Well, have a good day. By the way, when you get better, the detectives will come to see you. They need your testimony in Pedro's case. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. But for some reason, he felt neither delighted that his son was rich, nor any special hopes that now their family's life would change a lot. He was just glad that his child was alive and healthy. Well, he would be healthy soon. And Alex was sure that Naomi felt the same way. Since the day Max had found the gold and the cougar had found it, it had been a little over a year. Somewhere far away, the mountains were covering the first snow, and it also covered the street where the trailer houses were located. But Naomi and Alex couldn't see it because they were miles away in Florida. They had moved here only recently, but they already felt like home. Here their son had bought for them a small but very cozy house. Near it was a neat lawn and a flower garden. Max, when he received the reward, turned out to be a son, able to forgive all past offenses and ready to generously share with his loved ones what he received. And he also turned out to be a very smart guy. Alex was just shocked at how clever he was. However, Max himself waved away and said that Stuart consulted him on all matters. Max opened a trust fund in the name of his parents, and in addition to the house, gave them a car. Now Alex and Naomi had enough money in their account not to work at all, but they were thinking about finding something to do to keep themselves busy. And on the advice of their son, they started seeing a marriage counselor. And no, the love they had at the beginning of their marriage did not return instantly, but at least the relationship was no longer teetering on the brink of divorce. "I miss you," Naomi said. She and Alex were sitting on the veranda drinking evening tea and apple pie. "It's normal, I guess," said Alex. "He's all grown up now. He should make his own life." He didn't want to admit in such a silly sentimentality that he missed him too, because Max decided to become a historian and enrolled in a university in a distant state. He said he found his calling back there in the mountains and planned to spend his life studying the history of America's first settlers. And though Alex and Naomi did not quite agree with his choice, but what could they do? They could only accept their son's choice, wish him luck, and be grateful to fate that everything turned out so well in the end.